All right, so we're going to go over the answer key for section 8.4, which is page 573 in your booklet, in your textbook. All right, if we look at the first one here, number 11 that we were assigned, David is building a bike ramp. He wants the angle that the ramp makes with the ground to be 20 degrees right here. The board he is using for his ramp is 3.5 feet long right here. We want to know how tall the ramp will need to be at the highest point. So if we look at this, here's the angle. We have the hypotenuse, and we are looking for the opposite side. So that's going to tell us we're going to use the sine of 20 to be equal to x divided by 3.5. And so we cross multiply there. And then we type this into our calculator, and we are rounding then to 1.2 feet approximately. Problem 17, 20, and 21, you can check those on the answer key. Those are the ratios, and then taking the decimal and rounding them to the nearest hundredth, and they have you do the sine, cosine, and tangent for each one of the non-90 degree angles in each of those three triangles. Looking at number 28, we're given this measure here of the angle at 21 and an x here and an 11 there. So if we look at this, this is the opposite side and the hypotenuse, so that's going to be a sine, and so the sine of 21 is equal to 11 over x, and so we're going to have to cross multiply here. Remember, you can think of this as over 1 if that helps. And then we need to figure out what x is, so we're going to take and divide by the sine of 21. And so then we're typing this into our calculator, and we're getting approximately 30.7, rounding to the nearest tenth. Okay, going up to number 29. Number 29, we are given this angle here at 49 degrees, and we are given the opposite and the adjacent angle to it, and so we're going to use tangent. So tan of 49 is 33, which is our opposite side, over x, our adjacent side, and we're going to cross multiply. Once again, that x is, when we cross and multiply, the x is going to come up front here, and then we're going to have to divide by the tangent of 49. So we end up with this expression that we then need to put into our calculator. 33 divided by tan of 49 is going to give us approximately 28.7. In number 29, we're given angle 34 right here, and then we are given the hypotenuse, and we are looking for the adjacent, and so that's going to be cosine. So cosine of 34 is equal to the adjacent, which is x, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 28. And cross multiplying is going to give us 28 times the cosine of 34, and that's what we're going to put into our calculator to get approximately 23.2. In number 30, we're given this angle measure here at 63, and then we are given the adjacent, and we're looking for the hypotenuse. So that's going to be cosine again. So cosine of 63 degrees is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which was our unknown, our x. So when we cross multiply, the x is going to come out in front here, and then we need to isolate the x, so we're going to divide by the cosine of 63, and then this is what we're putting into our calculator. To simplify, we get approximately 57.2. In our next problem here, you can see that we are given 29 as our angle measure, and then we are given the adjacent, and we are given the opposite that we are looking for as our unknown. and so that is going to be tangent. And so we're going to say that tangent tan of 29 is equal to the opposite, which is x, over the adjacent, which is 32. And then when we cross multiply, we can see we're going to be typing this into our calculator, and that's going to give us approximately 17.7. Our next one here, we are given this at 38 degrees, and then we are also told the adjacent, we are told the hypotenuse and the opposite, and so that is going to be sine. And so sine and our angle measure is 38, and then opposite is x over hypotenuse is 20 times the square root of 2. So when we cross multiply, this is what ends up going into your calculator, and here is our approximate answer. All right, just a few more problems here. If we look at number 34, here was our angle measure. We are given the opposite, and what we were looking for is the length of the springboard, which is the hypotenuse. So we have our angle, so sine of 14.5 is equal to our opposite, which is 6, over our hypotenuse, which we didn't know, which was x. When we cross multiply, we could see the x goes out in front. We are then going to have to divide by this. And then this is the expression we're putting into our calculator to get approximately 24. All right, if we look at the roller coaster here, we are given angle measure of 55. This here, the hypotenuse is 98. This time we're looking for the opposite side, and so that is sine again. And so sine of 55 is going to be equal to the opposite, which we don't know, that's our x, over the hypotenuse, which was 98. Cross multiply, this is what's going into our calculator, and there is our approximate answer. All right, for the following here, we were asked to find x and y. And so what you may notice is that these are 30, 60, 90 or 45, 45 triangles. And so I wanted to show you a couple that you can use if you're given enough information, you could use your special triangles, 30, 60, 90 or 45, 45, 90, or you can use our trig functions. So if we look at this first one here, 70 is a 30, 60, 90. We are given that this here 60 degrees. We are given the opposite side, and we're looking for both the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So I'm going to start with that we're given the opposite, and I'm going to look for the adjacent, which is the x here. And so I'm going to take that will be the tangent. So tangent of 60 is going to be equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. When we cross multiply, the x comes out in front, and then we have to divide. This is the expression that's going in our calculator, and it's going to give us that x is 6. Now at that point, you can continue on with using trig functions. You could use Pythagorean theorem. You could go ahead and look at your 30, 60, 90 relationship. I'm just going to go ahead and since we're in trig functions, do the trig functions here. And so if we look at 60 again, and we're now wanting the hypotenuse, and I have the opposite, I'm going to use that is a sine. So the opposite is 6 times the square root of 3 divided by y, which is our unknown for the hypotenuse. You can see the y comes out in front. We have to divide by sine 60, and this ends up going in our calculator, which is 12. Number 70 was obviously a 45, 45, 90. We were given a leg here of 7 times the square root of 2. We should automatically know that that is 7 times the square root of 2. And we should multiply the leg times the square root of 2 to get the hypotenuse, which gives us 14. No need to go through all that work. All right, if we look at number 72, our angle that we were given was 30. We were given the hypotenuse. And so if we start by looking for x, which would be the adjacent, that's going to be a cosine. So cosine of 30 is equal to the adjacent, which was our x, divided by 14, which is our hypotenuse. And we're going to cross multiply. This goes into our calculator, which is approximately 12.1. You could see that if you were doing just your 30, 60, 90, that you would end up with 7 times the square root of 3 for that x, which is 12.1 as a decimal equivalent. And then the next one here, we're looking for the y. We have the hypotenuse. Y is the opposite, so that is going to give us a sine of 30 is equal to the opposite, y, or unknown, divided by our hypotenuse, 14. When we cross multiply, this goes into our calculator, and this would be 7.